Is this legit? I'm Sophie, tech marketer and social scientist. When I'm not advising tech startups on their marketing strategies, I'm helping protect everyday folks from online threats.
I'm Chris, a marketer with a background in both agencies and tech companies.
This week on, is this legit?
And I think they got millions out of Google before they got caught. It's crazy. Not even Google is safe.
Good morning.
Hello, Soph. Good morning.
So today we're talking about scams targeting marketers. We're both marketers. I'm actually going to focus on a certain type, but I'll tell you a little bit of context on different types and the hardest ones that are kind of the hardest ones to spot, which are the most dangerous ones. We've been in marketing for quite a while, and there are different kinds of scams that target marketers specifically, but a lot of the time, marketers don't necessarily see why, and so they're not as vigilant. Sometimes they forget that we actually have access to accounts that have financial information. And so what happens a lot of the time is people think, oh, well, yeah, if they're targeting finance, well, then I get that. Or if they're targeting C-suite because they have access to stuff, okay, I get that. But why would you target creative or
me? A little old social media manager.
Well, because we have access to stuff, right? And even though it might not be part of our job, or it might not be the center of what we do, a lot of the time we still have access to things, right? I've spoken to a ton of marketers that have been targeted by stuff, and they usually just kind of ignore it, right? Unfortunately, not all marketers are aware of what to look out for and don't necessarily know the cues or know the indicators to say whether something is actually legit or not. There's one thing in cybersecurity that is good to remember or understand is there are different vulnerability points along the supply chain, right? And sometimes we forget that even digital companies still have a supply chain. So agencies can be the target for their clients' access. In-house marketers can be the target to get to the financial information, can be the target to get access to customer information, right? Typical people that are targeted usually sales, marketing, finance, legal, HR. When it comes to agencies, the biggest vulnerability is that there is no cybersecurity because it's cost of operations, and agencies are going to want to have the biggest margin, right? And so unless their customers are like, hey, you actually have to make sure that your systems are safe, then they're not going to do it, right? And so there are two sides. There's in-house, that's one thing. And then it's up to the company to make sure that they're kind of safe. But then if you're using an agency, then who knows? And people don't really think of that as, oh, well, it's not our responsibility as a company to make sure. Well, it is. The supply chain counts, right? Anyway, so that's kind of, preamble to kind of the why this is kind of a bit more complex than people realize. Okay, so I can give a bit of ideas on different kinds of scams that usually target specifically marketers. I think the biggest thing is how hard are they to spot? Because some of them are really, really, really hard to see if they're suspicious or not. Scammers will use a sense of urgency, right? And so they'll send things sometimes on the weekend because marketers typically will still look at their emails on the weekend, and then they don't have access to IT, and then they're still gonna oh shit, something's not working. Their campaigns are still running. Oh, my Facebook ad account is blocked. I can't reach anybody. Okay, I'm just gonna fix it because I can't not let stuff run because the world's gonna explode if our ads are not running, So
oh my God, yes. Saving lives in marketing.
Now the channel to get to the person, to whoever you're targeting, that doesn't matter whether, in terms of phishing. So you have email, which is obviously mostly work related. Now, the tricky part with marketers is that our personal social media accounts are linked to our business accounts, unfortunately. So you're not going to get those emails to your work email. You're most likely going to get them to your personal email. And is your personal email safe? It's not, because you don't have the same filters or the same tools that you have with your work email, if you have at all. Another way is, yes, email, but also social media DMs. Problem there is that social media DMs and those platforms don't see DMs as email. Also, the method is quite different, right? It's not as complex, but they're using a lot of like social engineering tactics to get people to click on the thing, right? So you'll see it in Messenger. Hey, your ad account stopped. And you're like, oh, if I'm in Messenger, then it must be Facebook. And then the profile name is Facebook support chat. So you think that it's right. Okay? And then they'll be the same. The rest of the stuff looks the same. It's like, here's the message. Here's, the link, whatever. You can't always change what the link looks like in those. So that's harder, but then they can still redirect or they can spoof the domain. So in that sense, you can't really see ultimately where that link is going to send you, right? And you have obviously, like the other stuff that might not, be super relevant here, but you might have text messages or even calls or whatever else. Those, not so much. You'll get them in DMs and you'll get them in email mostly. So we're talking here about the phishing scams that are targeting marketers. So other types of things that marketers might see, invoice scams. So either fake invoice or vendor fraud or whatnot. A lot of the time, they're handling financials, but they might not necessarily be paying things, or they might not be sure. In like medium to bigger orgs, they might be like, oh, maybe somebody forgot to pay the thing. I'll just send it over to finance. And, accounting might not double check or, so there might be like a gap in kind of communication there.
Oh my God. That recently happened to Google, where a couple of Lithuanian programmers, they found out that they had a vendor in Taiwan. So they founded a company in Serbia with the same name. And they started sending invoices to Google. And I think they got millions out of Google before they got caught. It's crazy. Not even Google is safe.
When I was talking about the supply chain is important, this is a supply chain problem, right? Not really, obviously the business ID was different. It has to be. The address is different, but it doesn't matter, right? Because there was familiar things, and they gamed the fact that the internal comms was not as strong to protect against this stuff. So invoice scams are one thing, but in that sense, ultimately invoice scams still take longer. So we're not going to talk about those today. Anyway, there might be, fake invoices or whatever from legit vendors, but yeah, so that's one. Now there are fake lead gen or fake ad platform, right? Offering super low quality leads. And you're like, okay, great. Is anything I've seen it where they're like, yes, we do outbound SDR, whatever. And then you pay them for 6 months and then nothing comes. And you're like, these are shit leads. What's happening, right? So that's one thing that can be, either they're fake leads or they're super low quality.
But then there's another where people I get DMs hey, we can help you grow your thing. So that's the scam, right?
So that might be as well, right? So those kinds of messages can be that hey, I'm going to get you all these things, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Either they'll actually deliver the service, but the quality is going to be terrible, or they'll not deliver and still invoice you. Or then it can become a phishing, right? So it can become okay, now signing to this platform. And then either you'll get malware on your computer or they'll get your credentials or whatever.
Quick caveat for marketers, please never buy quality leads or followers or anything, because I've managed an account like that before, and to get the engagement and any results out of an account where somebody has bought followers before is near impossible. So please never. Exactly.
Oh, yeah. So yes, there's the, I offer a service, but I'm either invoicing you for something that doesn't really give you value or it might vanity numbers. Yeah. Or I might actually steal data and then give you those, right? So they're not even legitimate contacts. they might be actual stolen data. And data brokers, like there are plenty that like just sell like massive amounts of data, right, of people's personal information. So that might be also a thing. Now, some of the like either fake ad platforms or fake ad services, like basically like, hey, like I don't know, I'll give you this much CTR or whatnot. And then you get it and you're like, okay, cool, but none of that actually like converts. And then you find out that it's like really bad like leads or it's bots or whatnot. So it's not necessarily fake ad platforms, but it's like fake advertising on ad platforms, right? So again, we're not necessarily talking about that today, but it kind of ties in. So you'll see kind of later on why that ties in. So yeah, the overpromise, underdeliver kind of situation or hidden fees, like those are kind of typical, you know, those are like, okay, that's just like good business to make sure that like you're checking who you're doing business with. And so, yeah, they're sometimes hard to spot, but I mean, there's just bad business. Do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily like scam on a bigger level. It's not as insidious.
It's just shitty marketing, which isn't actually marketing. It's people who think that this is what marketing is about. And then if you have like very junior marketers, like they probably will.
Um, Now, there are other things that are kind of a bit harder to see. And so I'm actually going to like show you through kind of the path of what happens on some of these tougher ones. Other types that you might see just quickly for marketers, like, so business email compromise is basically like impersonating a vendor or impersonating an executive or a CEO, whatever. And then like, here I'd like to, whatever, that can be anybody. Like it's not necessarily just towards marketing.
Oh, it's kind of one of those, hey, I'm the CEO. Like, can you give me like 5 Amazon gift cards?
There's other stuff like fake influencers or, like bot accounts. And like, they're like, yes, I have all these followers and I can be an influencer for your company. And then you pay them, but it's all like, they're not real. All their followers are not real. So, there's that as well.
It's happening now more with like AI. Like I've seen so many of these AI generated people accounts and like not to confuse with Lil Michaela, who is like an AI whatever virtual influencer, but like yeah.
So there's those things, right? You might get like, doctored impressions and clicks where they're not actually real, where they're faking reports but all of those are just like bad business. You know what I mean?
Would you say that where is it that this is a scam influencer versus like it's a small influencer that is just trying to get started with their, because I've seen a lot of those as well, they're just trying to like break into it and that's why they're going around like, hey, I can help you like market this thing.
Well, first, get on a video call. So that's one thing where you can actually see their face and interact.
So when you have a blonde girl on your Instagram profile and then a hairy old dude on the video call.
Understanding how you can tell if a video is also AI, right? Because they might get on a call and you're like, okay, this is the person. Usually AI videos, okay, we're going slightly off topic, but I'll still tell you. So for AI videos, if you, like the person never turns their head, because that's harder to actually like, at least right now. And so usually like that doesn't move. And then like the actual details of the background are not great. And the voice seems a bit off. You might not be able to tell, but it seems a bit off. So there are some things, right? Another thing with video or audio, if it's AI generated, there is like lagging in response. So not because of like bad connection, there's lagging because somebody's typing the answer. So they listen to the question and then they'll type the answer and then the answer is going to come out in that voice. So there's like a pause that you can kind of like tell the difference between a pause that's like the computer kind of the connection and do you know what I mean? Like you can tell somebody
Yeah.
answers right away and it kind of like lags. That's different than an actual long pause, right?
Wow, that's the next level. But no, I've seen those like AI filters, like in Asia particularly, they're very developed. And yeah, I don't think that like many people like in the West have seen what they've developed in the West in Asian markets. It's crazy.
Well, I think like that's definitely a thing. So if you're well, and this is like just general good business. If you're going to be doing business with people that you have never met, meet them virtually. Have an actual video call with a camera on. make sure that like you can see them in different contexts that they did not dictate. Like, I want to only like communicate on Telegram. And you're like, okay, cool. What's your LinkedIn? Maybe we should connect. Oh, I don't have a LinkedIn. Do you have, Instagram?
Red flags.
So try to be on your own territory, on your terms, at least until you can verify that they're legit. And then like you can, make it easier for them or whatever and speak on their own platform of choice. So that's one thing for those kinds of scams. Today though, I want to talk mostly about ad fraud because ad fraud is fascinating.
It is, and it's rampant.
I think a lot of people don't really understand why ad fraud is so prevalent and why it's such like a tough one to crack. So what I've noticed is when talking to people about like the reasons why people scam, right? Is that they're like, okay, but I can't figure out where they're getting the money. So like, what's their motive? We watch all these crime shows and they're like, the motive is important, right? So like, what's the motive? Like if I read a thing, a communication, and I can't figure out what the motive is, it's really hard to then like be suspicious. You're like, they're not really asking anything from me. So it can't be a scam, right? Think again.
Sorry, like is it an email where it's almost like what types of like comms are you?
Oh, so in this case, I'm going to talk about two types. So one of them is recruitment emails that are targeting marketers. And the other one is emails that seem to be coming from an ad platform that is saying this ad was approved, disapproved, this account is blocked, some kind of urgent. Those ones typically people are a bit more suspicious because the trick is basically, if you see a message from LinkedIn Ads Manager or Facebook Ad Manager, whatever, then you just don't touch the email. You just go in the platform. And then the platform will have a notification. They always have a notification if there's something wrong, right? So that's that trick. Unfortunately, not everybody does that. And they'll still target, general emails. So info at, marketing at, et cetera, and hope that somebody is like, oh shit, this is actually a thing, or, and that doesn't really understand. They might not even have access to the account, but they might forward it to somebody, and that gives legitimacy, right? So let's say it gets sent to info at, and the person's like, I don't have access, but it's like Saturday and the ads are being blocked and whatever. Then they send it to marketing at, then you're like, this other person, like that adds the trust. This other person thinks that this is real. It looks real. Okay, I'm going to send it to whoever, or I have access and nobody's answering. So we need to make sure that it still runs, and then they click, right? So that might be a path. The tougher one to understand is the recruitment ones. Why are people targeting marketers in recruitment emails? What is the motive?
I got so many of these.
Right. So what would you think the motive is?
That I'm probably, I already know how the scam works, so I will let you explain it. But obviously, you're going to get excited. You're like, hey, yes, Nike sent an email that they want to like hire me. There's all that like fluff that we've noticed your exceptional work on what you currently do. And then you respond to them. There's not even like a link, right? They're just trying to get like a response. They're like, if you are interested, just like answer to this email. Okay, you answer to the email. You send over a resume. They're like, yes, again, they're going to like love bomb you. Let's schedule an interview. And then they send over a link, the meeting link. And that by that time, you're already kind of like in, right? Yeah. You start like trusting them, and then you click the link. And oftentimes what happens, allegedly, or like, I haven't fallen for it, but thankfully we have our expert Sophie here who has explained it multiple times already. But essentially, whatever platform that link leads to, it asks you to verify yourself, whether through Facebook or LinkedIn, mostly Facebook, right? And that's where they actually take you to a screen that you have to type in your password and your login details, and actually it's being, I guess the word is mirrored, or like it's being recorded.
Yes, mirrored.
Was that the thing?
Yes.
So
Yes.
somebody on the
Yes.
other side sees what you're doing on that screen at the same time, so they can log in with you simultaneously.
And so when you even have
And that's how they.
multi-factor authentication, they will then have that as well. So then it'll put in the code, you'll put it in, they'll put it in, and then it'll actually work, and then they can actually get in, right? Um, the tough part,
There goes your
well,
account.
here's the thing. The tough part is like people are like, okay, but then what do they do? What do they do? Like my personal account is empty. Like I don't use it anymore. What are they going to do with it? Right. And that's what I want to kind of talk about, because understanding why they do this helps you be more vigilant, because then it's not like, well, I'm not giving them a credit card. Like I know not to give a credit card to random strangers on the internet. I'm not a boomer. Like I know that much, right? That's not what they're getting to though, right? They're not even trying to get, well, some maybe, but mostly they're not trying to get your credit card information. Okay. So what happens is, so there's, these two means, right? Like directly from the fake ad platform, like log into the thing to get your credentials. It's a bit more obvious to see, but even then people get caught all the time. It's not about stupidity. It's just circumstance. Okay. You don't have to be stupid to fall for this. People fall for it because they are very, very hard to spot. So hard. They make them very good. These scammers, they're professionals, right? The other way is finding some other means, pretext to gain trust. And after more communication, that's when they ask you to log in for some other random reason that has nothing related to the ad platform per se. Right? So the technique there is I am offering you something so that you don't think I want something from you, right? So I'm giving you a job. I want to give you money, right? The recruitment scams, there's kind of two things. Like now we're talking about the marketing, like targets. There's the general remote work recruitment scams of like, it's a fake job, you get hired, and then here you can order your stuff and we'll reimburse you for all the stuff that you ordered, and then you don't have a job anymore, and then you just spent a whole lot of money ordering equipment that you're never going to get, and also spend, like all of these things. That's how they get you, right? We're not talking about those. We're talking about the ones that want access to your ad accounts. Right. So then what happens is there's a few things that can happen. Either they will go in and they'll just do the typical, finding the credit card information. Okay, that's one thing. Either they'll take over your account and they will start running real ads on your account, but they're selling. Well, no, they're selling their services to another client. So they're like an agency. They get paid by the client and then they put it on your credit card. So then they pocket the money, right? So they're running legit ads, but they're not running them with the client's money. They're running it with your money.
Well, okay, question. Technically, like eventually this gets like solved, Meta maybe flags it or you yourself notice like, hey, there's some fishy stuff going on. Would it technically be possible to like, okay, but I know that this client's like stuff is managed by this agent, or it's not like big agencies that do it. It's like some small, like sketchy agencies to start with, and then it's impossible to even like track them down because it's probably from some country that language you don't even speak. So what are you even
Well,
going to
they're
do about it?
impersonating something, right? So it might be like even they might have a ton of different websites offering their services or whatever and saying like, I'll get you better clicks at cheaper price, blah, 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 whatever. And they're like, okay, I guess I'll let them run my thing. So then they kind of give over like, okay, as long as I kind of see results, I guess. And then they kind of fake reports, or it's not that hard, right? So that kind of ties in.
All of that just makes my brain hurt. I'm like, why are people like, to me, to like marketing on its own is already so hard, and to like run a scam agency where you like try to hack someone else's like ad account and run ads and fake reports, I'm like, who has the time for that in marketing? Oh
Well,
my
because they're not
god.
marketers.
I know, but that's what I'm like, Jesus Christ, like just do the job as you're supposed to. You're
It's not
overcomplicating
as
it.
profitable. And
Billionaires.
so that's one thing that they can do, right? Running legit ads on somebody else's account so that they can pocket the difference. Okay, that's one thing. Another thing they can do, yeah, it could be like their own ads, but another thing they can do is run fake ads. So those ads can become phishing. So then what they can do is like some shitty product that they might be advertising that's like, I don't know, like crypto, whatever, fake. Okay. Or like literally phishing where then they're trying to get access to the victims who are clicking on the ads, their credentials or, their access to their computer so that they can download malware. So like you might click on the ad and then it downloads malware, or you might click on the ad and then it's like a fake product and then you still buy the thing or whatever and it's like it's bogus. Or you click on the thing and then it's asking you to buy the thing, log into the thing, and now they have your information, right?
And the point there is that that's one way for the scammers to never get caught on the platforms because they're using someone else's like ad accounts. So they can just like continue doing that scam until infinity.
As long as they get people to click on the original link to actually get their credentials, they have unlimited ad accounts to really use. And the thing is, like, it's hard. It's really hard because when you think about the length of time, it might take like a few weeks, right, to actually get money out of that. And it's really hard for the person, like the individual first point of entry, to be like, oh yeah, I see where this is going. Who sees where this is going? Like, it's really hard to like put yourself in somebody's shoes of being like, yeah, nobody's going to spend that much time going back and forth and talking to me about this. It's worth it. Even if you only get a few thousand per ad account that you hack, like it doesn't matter because you have so many other in your pipeline. So that person that's like, hey, this awesome job, there's a pretty good possibility. Like if things look too good to be true, if like you start digging into the details and you're like, something feels off, like all of those things, then they're probably running this scam on like thousands of people at the same time, right? That's the end goal to ad fraud, which is, I think, the hardest for marketers to catch. It's very specific to marketers and it's hard to find out before you get caught, right? The first time I actually got firsthand experience or heard firsthand experience about this was a couple years ago. A former colleague had messaged me saying like, hey, like I'm pretty far to this recruitment process, but I'm starting to get suspicious and I'm pretty sure I clicked on something, right? And I investigated. And so I'm actually going to go through kind of that story with you to kind of bring it all together. And so, yeah. So this specific one, what happened was this person got a recruitment email. The recruitment email had an impersonated name. So it was a real person's name. It had real persons, company, all that kind of stuff. When you look them up on LinkedIn, this person really did exist. Note, their account was not hacked. So like nobody was like using their LinkedIn account. They weren't using their actual email. Okay. They don't need to do that because like the actual email was like their name at a version of their agency.hr.com or something, right? And so, yes, so they'll be like,
which is actually, if in doubt, you can connect with that person on LinkedIn.
So here's what happened, right? So I get this kind of tip from this friend and I tell him like, hey, can you just send me the email file so that I can actually see what's happening? And so the first one, everything's written great, no spelling mistakes, no typos. So like the traditional, if there's a bunch of typos and it's really bad English, then that's a sign. Well, we have AI now to fix all of those. So there's no more mistakes.
I can tell you the scams over the past 2 years, they have gotten so good. Like, it's impossible to tell which one is a legit email now or which one is a scam.
Email comes up and they're like, oh, like we do this, loved your profile. The typical name dropping. We work with, this one said Apple, Adidas, Lego, blah, blah. Okay. Try to build trust. So they're using all these techniques, right? They're trying to build trust. They're trying to build familiarity. They're not asking you for anything. They're actually offering you something. So it puts your guard down, right? This specific one did not even have like, we'll pay you 200K. It did not even overpromise. It was quite simple, right?
Which it's actually very sophisticated, like to keep it like not overdoing it, make it seem like genuine, like real.
And so that was like, hey, all I'm asking is like, hey, do you have time to chat about the opportunity, right? The follow-up email to that was then, hi, okay, yeah, I'd be interested. And then the follow-up was lovely, super happy. Let's have a chat. I have a few roles that I have in mind. And then I can actually read the text because this was actually, I published this publicly. So, I'm not giving away secret information, but this person wrote, we're a big fan of meeting people. We'd love to properly connect via video call sometime soon. So you're like, okay, trust.
So that was the scammer calling or scammer saying that. Okay.
We'd like to get to know you, understand your ambitions. Can you please take a look at my calendar and book an open slot? Which, quite typical as well. I mean, I do this all the time with Calendly, right? But then they write, we still use old-fashioned way for call schedules. This is an official meta calendar shared between us and the respective brands involved. Once you schedule, you'll also have full visibility to all the job prospects and detailed descriptions, hence the verification steps. So they're already addressing points in advance of, we will put verification steps. We use a meta-powered platform situation, and then you'll be able to connect. So it might not be what you're used to, but that's how we do it. It's explaining all the tests that, stuff that's going to happen. And it says, book a time. The link was a full link. It was Calendly the agency name. Once you clicked on there, it led you to, believe it or not, it led you to a fake page. Well, actually, I can just show you.
So was that a case of that URL being a hidden link that was like a different link that was put behind the URL that you would see in the email?
Actually, so sent you an image. Basically, the scammer was sent a Calendly link to schedule a call for the chat. And then the page that opened, the URL was calendly.agency.com. And then it looked like a Calendly page, but log in with Facebook. So I sent you the actual login page that opened up. Okay, what do you see?
Looks legit. Yeah. So there's a little pop-up and it's prompting to log into Facebook, and you get, everything looks legit, like your usual Facebook login page. There's a field to enter your email or phone number and your password, and then there is a button to log in. And to me, would not be able to tell whether it's real or not. Even the URL looks very...
Yeah. So when we investigated this, I was actually able to see on a protected device what this landing page looked like because it was still live when we got the tip. So they had not been shut down. A lot of the time they're shut down and you can never really see or interact with the actual landing pages. Luckily, we were able to this time. This pop-up is not a genuine pop-up. And if you started to hover on some of the links, they were not real links. They were just regular text. So all of the languages at the bottom that you see or any of the other links, they didn't work. The URL that you see is not a real URL. It's just in the page, right? It's text.
It's just
and so
text.
It looks legit,
not like a URL.
But then if you actually hover on it, it's not actually a link, right? So for comparison, let me just send you legit Facebook login. And is there a huge difference? This was the one that was current. If you wanted to log into Facebook, not if you were logging in to another service with Facebook.
Yeah, it is. The thing also is that I would say that because Facebook is so big and it has been alive, a functioning site for 10, 15 years now, there are elements inside of Facebook that are not up to date, or they are old just because it's such a massive platform. It's some aspects of it have just been abandoned by devs. So I wouldn't even be surprised if I see some old logos or elements across it. So that's why that image that you sent me before with that fake login page and Calendly, it would not raise any alarm bells in me.
We should kind of be suspicious of things that look off. This did not look off enough that the target actually put in her credentials, eventually.
So she got it. She made it over to that Calendly page. She started putting in those things, and the
email looked fine. She looked the person up on LinkedIn. They looked legit. Everything looked legit. There were some discrepancies. So, her title wasn't exactly the same. The name of the agency wasn't exactly the same. It was like some
But we
kind
all
of
do that.
version of it.
But again, it happens where I see like people refer to sometimes to an agency McCann versus
So
sometimes it's Universal
there
McCann.
was nothing that was like obvious, right? Now she did log in, and that's when she was like, this does not feel real. This is weird. So she closed the window and then she messaged me. If that happens to you, listeners, and you realize a little bit too late, literally go into the real Facebook or whatever you put your credentials and remove all the devices that are logged in, change your password, and re-log in. So you can go and find all the devices that are currently logged in and then remove access to all of them and change your passwords. And please use a password manager and please use complex passwords, but do it immediately. And it should help. It should help if you do it right away because they might not have had time to go in. Now, what we suspect for this one, because we actually went through slightly further while investigating, and it did ask for multi-factor authentication, right? We put in fake credentials, so obviously nothing was sent. But while we were running it, we were able to actually see the lag time. When you're logging into something, like it logs in pretty much automatically. This one was like taking a bit extra longer to like do anything. And also it was fake credentials, but it still asked us for multi-factor authentication, which if it's a fake, like if it's not real, and Facebook's like, this email, like we don't recognize this email. Not, okay, great, next step, right? Because they're not actually checking Facebook yet, right? So then what usually happens is then they'll put multi-factor authentication, then they'll ask you for the code, and then they'll get in, right? So this person actually, like, nobody got into her account, but it was really, really, really close, right?
Damn. That moment where you log in and you realize like, shit, what did I just do? And that like moment of panic. And I swear, like I would be so paranoid like afterwards as well.
Facebook is actually almost 20 years old, and I know it ages us. And so over the years, there's been quite a few different kind of scams involving Facebook and whatnot. But there has been ad fraud documented and found over the years. Yeah. So what we found out while digging in is that the person had been informed because she had then posted on LinkedIn being like, hey, I was told that my account was hacked or whatever. Again, nobody hacked her account. They just used her name. That's it. Here's what we did find out for this particular case. There were two different fake domains. The email domain did not match the link domain. No actual web page existed for the email domain. So email domain. So let's say your email is at mycompany.com and there's no website for mycompany.com. That's a red flag. So they had two different domains and they didn't match. Nothing matched. And there was no web page for that company. The domain registration was really recent, even though the company was not new. So we found that out as well. So the people registering the domain that they're using for these scams, they're going to do it within a couple days and they change them. They do it constantly, right? And so that was new. Other things, the company name was misspelled in the Calendly link, right? But it was very small. It was not a huge. So sometimes what they'll do is they'll use like numbers that look like letters and then you can't tell. So they'll use a 1 instead of an O or those kinds of things, right? Yeah. So we found those as well. Facebook was needed to log into Calendly, which is not typical, but the Facebook login page was quite inconsistent with the current look. It looked quite older Facebook. But again, you need to kind of know. So that's kind of hard to spot as well. But it had limited and unusual functionality. The buttons were not real buttons. The links were not real links. Like the functionality of the page was wrong. So you wanted to click on the cookie consent thing on the bottom, you couldn't. It was on a link. So those are their signs, right? The attempts to log in took really, 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 really long, right? Like way too long for it wasn't, I mean, really long. It wasn't like minutes, but like it was like multiple tens of seconds. Yes. And then we also found out that the web requests made from the Facebook login page did not go to Facebook. They were not going to Facebook. They were going to them, right? So yes, we did find out some information, but it was still really hard because by the time that everything was still live and everything was going, and we did send all of that information to the proper authorities so that they can actually shut them down.
What are the correct or authorities to report these
the
kind of
National
things?
Cybersecurity Center in Finland, because that is where the victim was. That is where we are. It's part of Traficom, so that's where you would send it. It depends on your country. Unfortunately, the victim and the scammers are not usually in the same country. It's tough. There's a few cases that are well documented online using, ad fraud. So Ducktail is a campaign that happened using spear phishing to install malware on Facebook ad account holders, steal their information and infiltrate their org. So then steal more data. Vastflux and MethBot ran fraudulent programmatic ads for years. These campaigns were running before anybody stopped them.
And that was a Meta?
So yes, these kinds of scam campaigns were running. Basically, these they call them campaigns, but they basically were running targeting marketers because then they would have access to somebody else's ad account. And so for all the reasons that we talked about earlier, like that's why they were doing it, right? Whether they were running their own ads or they were running, real or fake ads or harvested accounts to run some other kinds of. So there's all these different kinds of reasons why. Ultimately, yes, it's about money, but there's kind of a different to make. So Ducktail, let me just tell you a little bit how that worked. Basically, they would actually identify companies that they wanted to target. Those companies needed to operate a Facebook business ad platform account of some sort, right?
Which is most businesses these days?
Yeah. Then they would target employees with possible access to that company's account, and they target them through LinkedIn. So they find them on LinkedIn. They might not necessarily message them on LinkedIn, but that's how they find out who it is. They'll be like, okay, who's marketer? Who's this? Who's that? Da, 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 da. And then they'll target those people, right? Then what they'll do is they'll try to either send them a message or they'll try to send them a DM or whatever. And they'll use different techniques to try to get them to download. So in this case for Ducktail, to download and execute malware on their computer. Then they scan for browsers, then they steal the cookies from those browsers. And then once they find the Facebook session cookie, then they go and steal the information. So they didn't even have to ask, like, put in your credentials for Facebook. Then they're able to steal the account information, all the associated ad accounts and businesses. And then they look, okay, is that person's individual personal Facebook account linked to a business? If yes, then they try to add the threat malicious person's email, so the scammer, their email, to the business as an admin with finance editor roles, right? Yes. And then what they do is they then get access to that business ad account, and then they steal the victim's data. They take all the data that they can get, and then they start over again and again. And so then they can literally get into either other platforms or they can run fake ads. And so then they basically have access to that org, right? So that's kind of a more complex scam, and not all of them are like this. So for this particular campaign, it's still running. So it can still happen. The last time they had seen, so 2021, it was still being found.
All right. Marketers, stay vigilant. They're out there to get you.
Yeah. So that's that story. That started with a recruitment email that wasn't asking for anything, but it looks different when it's like these meta emails or LinkedIn ad emails, Google ads, any ad platform. So it could be violation of guidelines, community guidelines, appeal, whatever. It could be security check. It could be Facebook account restriction, of some sort. And those are sent by email, but they are also sent on DMs, so Messenger. a lot of the time. The difference with Messenger is that you can't like add like logos and you can't add the visual branding that makes it trustworthy, but emails you can. There's a recent one that has been going around that I have seen where the from and reply was not Facebook, but was actually another company that was quite reputable. And then the reply to was actually the correct reply to the facebookmail.com. So to wrap things up, why would scammers target marketers specifically? They have access, or we have access to sensitive information. We typically have some budget, some kind of money access. A lot of the time it could be large budgets. Marketers are typically people, and I mean, it's just the nature of our job that if we're suspicious of everybody, we're not gonna be very good at it. The time sensitive nature of what we do, a lot of tight deadlines, it makes urgent decisions kind of happen.
Yeah, we respond to urgency.
Again, reminder for listeners, we are not saving lives, most of us. So it's okay to like take a breather before taking action on anything.
Yeah. Don't click anything
in general,
just because it says it's urgent.
But a lot of marketers don't necessarily have technical knowledge or cybersecurity knowledge. I've had so many these messages you have to share with your team because if you got it, other people got it. Other people on your team got it for sure.
So just stay vigilant and pay attention to what your IT team is telling you, or cybersec team.
And if you don't have a cybersec team, go find the basic information that you need for yourself to make sure that you don't get caught. Another reason that can make marketers maybe more susceptible is also knowing trends and knowing new technologies and having the willingness to try new things, right? Everybody wants to get on the bandwagon of the new trend. And then what happens is you try all the things. It's like, do you really want to give access to this new tool?
Yeah, we're so used to like blindly just like clicking accept, consent, yes, whatever. Like sometimes, again, just take a moment to think about like, is this a good idea?
Like marketers are probably like IT's like worst nightmare. Like, I want to try the new tool.
Gen AI, like that is the worst one because suddenly all your company data, like you're copy pasting confidential emails into Chat GPT. Please don't do that.
So what's also a strength that we're like willing to try new things and figure stuff out can also be like really, really dangerous, right? So how can you protect yourself? Be skeptical. Assume that things might not be what they seem. Unsolicited offers, things that are like, here is something that I'm giving you. It's like, okay, I don't know you. Like, what is this? You know, verify things, verify like companies, individuals, but verify them enough, right? So in the case of the recruitment scam, you could verify quite well. And they do that, right? They use people's name, picture, information, all that. So verify a bit more than that. Use a password manager, strong, unique password for all your online accounts. Don't reuse them.
But what happens if something happens to my device and I don't have access to my password manager anymore?
So you should have a recovery key and you should have access to it on your phone. You should have a YubiKey. But the fact that people still use, no joke, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Password 1, no password. It's still the most popular, ABCD, like still the most common passwords. It's insane, right? So strong, unique passwords.
And then reused across like 5 different platforms.
Different passwords, but one that I cannot stress enough that I have seen marketers be so bad at. Please update your software and your browser settings. Update to the latest version because yes, you can, learn all the things to look out for, but if there are technical vulnerabilities in your system, just update. You have all the tabs open right now. It doesn't matter. It'll re-upload them. Like it'll open again.
That's what essentially system updates are all about. Yes. Like there is probably some vulnerability that was detected. And that's why they're like patching it up. And that's why there's an up. So it's not to annoy you and like make you close your 500 tabs. It's for a reason. So do it as soon as possible, please.
Yeah. And so yeah. That's basically it. There are, a ton of different scams that target marketers, but I think the most insidious ones are these kinds of ad frauds because it's so complex, and You're like, oh, nobody would want to get to our system because we're so small.
That's exactly why they would target you, because you probably don't have the security in place and the systems in place to protect you.
Usually they think they're not going to target us. We're too small. We have nothing to give them. And I'm like, but you have an ad account with a credit card.
That's all they need.
And so everybody can be a target. And hopefully this kind of gives our listeners a little bit to look out for, make sure that they don't get caught. Because these are happening and they're harder and harder to spot.
It's once you do get hacked, it's really hard to get your account back, to get your ads back running, and it's just generally not a very pleasant experience. So please try to be cautious because you don't want to deal with the mess afterwards.
And also people lose their jobs over this. I mean, they shouldn't, because again, it's
not their fault. Like, it can happen.
It's up to the organization to make sure that they're secure. But people do lose their jobs over this, unfortunately. So be vigilant. And call out to our listeners. If you've ever experienced any story similar to this, please reach out. Please reach out because we'd love to talk to you and hear your story.
Next time on Like, Is This Legit?
And we tell our loved ones, like, hey, this is a scam that's going around. Not to make anybody paranoid, but just to make sure that they don't get caught.
Normalize talking about scams.
Yeah.
Dear listeners, please note that the views and opinions in this episode, like all episodes of Like, Is This Legit, do not reflect the official position of the podcast and are the hosts and guests' subjective opinions and quoted allegations. The content from each episode of Like, Is This Legit should not be taken for indisputable fact and should be viewed as an educational starting point for listeners. All content shared by our hosts, guests, and sponsors are their own opinions and are not meant to defame or misrepresent any business, group, organization, individual, anyone, or anything. Just don't scam people. Okay? Okay.